Hello everyone, I'm Professor Toybox and I'd like to welcome you back to Atlantis. I'm building a dungeon crawling adventure in my Toybox, similar to Brave Forest Siege, Escape from the Kiln, and Toybox Takeover. Last time we built the starting area of the game, and today the Lone Ranger and I are going to start working on the next area. My plan is to generate this area randomly, so it's different every time I play. First I'll explain my plan for doing this, and then we'll get started. And actually, even before that, I'd like to show you a couple of small changes that I made since the last time we were here. So, at the end of the last session, I'd set up this trigger area to kick off the random generation. And since then, I added a logic gate here. And the purpose of the logic gate, if we come in here and look at this, is to set this up so that when the player exits that trigger area, we open this gate. And when the gate is open, we deactivate that trigger area. And the reason we do that is because we only want to do the random generation one time. So as soon as they exit this box, we want to deactivate that so they can't walk out of it, turn around, and walk back in and mess up the random generation. The other thing that I did over here at the wall is I added in a couple of barriers on either end so that you can't get around this. Of course, you can still fly over this if you've got a flying character, but I'm kind of recommending any players that I have over who play this to not use a flying character, because that would kind of ruin the fun. So that's the starting area that we built last time, and this area again is fixed. It's going to be the same for every game that we play, except for a few items that you pick up that will be in random locations. So now we're going to move on to the next area over here. And the idea here is to get from the gate, which I'm standing over right now, to the one over on the far end. And if we go into Spark mode and fly upward here, we can take a look at this. So I've pre-built this first area here. This is not going to be what's final, but I built this out without using any randomness or whatever, because I kind of want to get an idea of the size of this area and the spacing of things, and also kind of figure out the rules for generating this. So as I had mentioned last time, I could hook up 10 replayers to a randomizer, and each of the random trigger signals from the randomizer would kick off one replayer, which would generate one of 10 possible layouts for this next section. But that's still kind of a little predictable. So what I want to do with this is divide this up into 3 sections. So starting from the wall here, over to about this point here, everything to the left here, over to that gate, is going to be section number 1. From this platform area here over to this one, this middle section will be section number 2. And then from about this point over toward the left over to that area is going to be section number 3. This little island over here on the end, the block that it's sitting on right here and everything currently on it is going to be fixed. So no matter what layout gets selected during the random generation, this will always be here. So this gives me a point to work towards. Additionally, 2 other blocks are going to be fixed. This one here is always going to be here, though not necessarily everything on it or these little areas around it. And also this block over here will be fixed. And my idea here is that starting from the gate in section number 1, when I set up the replayer and generate this, the section here at the gate will either build out and connect towards this block, or it will build up and connect this block or both. This middle section will always connect the two middle blocks here, so there'll always be a way to get from that block to this one, either by walking or rails or platforms or whatever. And then for the third section, the final island over here where you're trying to get to, I will build out a section that will either connect to this little block here or that one over there, or both. And with those rules, what that means is that no matter what section layout gets picked for each section, I will always have a path, at least one path, that will take me from this gate over to that gate. And so that will give me a consistent path. And with 3 sections and 10 layouts per section, that's about 1,000 different combinations. So that will add a lot of replayability because I'll never know exactly how this final section is going to look. Now, one of the things I'm going to have to look out for is going to be overlap. So we have to be very careful on this middle section that anything we build out between these two blocks here does not overlap anything that I create over in section 1 or in section 3. And so what we can do is we can come down here and drop a few huge terrain blocks below this as kind of some markers and building guidelines, just so that I kind of know where I can and can't build for this middle section. And likewise for the sections here on section 1 and section 3, we'll make sure that they don't overlap any of these areas either. So if I stick this down here like so, and like so, then that basically means that for the middle area, I'm free to build anything that's over top of this green area. And as long as I don't extend beyond that, I don't have to worry about colliding with anything over here. And likewise, when I'm building over here, as long as I stay over on this side of the block, on the left side, I don't have to worry about bumping into anything here. So that will help kind of delineate the two sections, and I'll delete those blocks after we're all done. Now, one of the next things I'm going to do, now that I've kind of laid this out, is I'm going to go ahead and delete this section in section 1 and rebuild it with the replayer. And I'll insert some trees and some other things to finish it out. But before I do that, we should probably talk about replayers and some of the limitations that we've got with these. So I've set up a little block over here that kind of shows what you can and can't do with a replayer. So you can basically put down terrain blocks, anything that doesn't require a logic connection. So terrain blocks, plants, these kinds of blocks. One of the things you want to do though when you're doing these kinds of blocks is before you start recording with the replayer, you want to come in here and pick whatever texture you're going to use. And I'm going to hit Y in the case of the Wii here to set the theme, so that whenever I drop a new block, it will always be with that texture. And that's not necessarily the one I'm going to use, but just to get the point across, when you're doing the replayer and you're recording, it's not going to record texture changes. So for any objects that you want to set up ahead of time, that you want to use, you have to set them up ahead of time. That includes the blocks, that includes the customizable pieces in the plant drawer here, and any ledges and things like that. You can put down decorations, that's fine with the replayer, buildings, racetrack pieces, things out of the platforming drawer that don't require logic connections, so like these traps, this moving platform. Again, you'll want to set the default texture. If I put a new one down, it'll have the brick texture that I already specified. things like the ladders, the ledge hangs, rail slides, climbing pipes, destructible blocks, a key, a vehicle, spikes, any of those kinds of traps. None of these things require logic connections, so you can put any of these kinds of things down with a replayer. You don't want to put down any creative controls or locators or anything like that that you're going to have to hook up to later, because the replayer is not going to remember the connections that you make, and every time you clear the replayer and replay it, it's basically going to put down a brand new set of objects, so it will not ever remember any connections that you make. So those are the limitations with the replayer. So now if we come out over here, and I'm going to go ahead and drop down a replayer, and we'll need 10 of these, but we'll start with the 1 for right now. So we'll come in here to the Creative-Toys drawer, and we'll pick up a replayer, and go ahead and drop that down. And before we kick that off, we'll go ahead and clear these blocks that I put down earlier. And since I've already built this once and I kind of already know how this goes, I think I'll go ahead and keep this as a possible layout. Not necessarily all of the areas that I build will be necessarily this wide and so forth. I could set up some very narrow kinds of areas. I can set up rail slides, I can set up moving platforms, teleporter. There's all kinds of different things we could do to connect up with those blocks. And I'll delete those in just a moment. The other thing too is I'm going to have this rule. So this block here that I'm connecting to, anything on this end of the block, finishing edges like I just deleted there, will be set up by Section 1's replayers. Anything on this end of the block or this end of the block will be by Section 2's replayers, and then anything on this block will be Section 3. So I'm going to leave 2 and 3's pieces there for right now. I'll go ahead and delete the road sections that I put in earlier. And then we'll go ahead and turn on the replayer and rebuild this, and also add in all the other details that I didn't need just to space all this out. Okay, so there's that. The other thing I'm going to need to do actually before I kick that off, as I said, we need to set up our textures ahead of time. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I think that's the one I'm going to be using. So we'll already be set there. So I'll come over here, set that as our theme so that every block we create will have that texture. And while we're right here, let's go ahead and set up some of these plants for things that I'll want to do. Judging from what we have seen earlier, I'm probably going to be using those pirate trees. I'm not sure I'm going to put too many ruins in here, or too many of these little plant settings. But let's just see what we've got. I might want to use some of these Pirates of the Caribbean plant sections. So like that one. Oops, and I think I just hit apply. I want to set the theme so that new ones that I put down will have that same texture. Like that. And I don't think I'm going to need that one. I'm not going to use any of those face pieces. This one, though, we might want a few little ruin pieces. So I'll go ahead and set that. And then we may want to use some rows of plants. So I'll go ahead and set this to the pirate theme. And likewise with this first one. And that way these will all be set up again so that when we start recording, these are the textures that will go down for these objects. And I don't think I want any pillars. We might want some of these little odd ruin shapes here. It'll add some visual interest along the way. We already set up that other one. And I think that will probably be it. We'll go ahead and set this one up for this little altar type thing. Okay, so now the textures are set for those. I can go ahead and delete these objects. Okay, and then last is the racetrack. I want to make sure the texture for that is set. So there's a little bit of prep work that you have to do before you can use the replayer. But if you forget something and you're going along and you realize you forgot it, you can always clear the replayer, stop recording, clear the replayer, and start over. Okay, so now that's everything. And at this point, we'll go ahead and come up here and step on this replayer and go ahead and build that section for real. So we'll come over here, start recording, step off the replayer so I can get back in the toy box drawers, and away we go. And since we're right here, we'll start off with the racetrack. This should be easy to connect since the racetrack pieces kind of help you along. This is how I built this the first time. It's kind of figuring out where I want things to go. Make sure everything's still lining up with where we're building to. Fortunately, these large straights on the racetracks, these here, line up with the blocks that I'm using underneath. So this serves as a good measurement unit. And now normally I would not build on top of this area because this is going to be for section 2. However, I can put down things on top of this road, so this shouldn't be a problem. So we're going to go ahead and I think it was, I think it's that one. It's going to be now. Yeah, it should have been the longer one. That's okay. Alright, I was hoping to center that a little better. Okay, so there's the road. And now we'll come along and put the terrain underneath it. You may have noticed that my voice has faded a little bit in the last few videos. When we went to Disney recently, as I mentioned in my Magic Band video, I caught a bit of a cold, and that turned into bronchitis, and I actually lost my voice for a few days. It's mostly coming back now, but it's still a little bit faded, and I still got a little bit of a cough, but trying not to let that interfere with what I need to do here. I didn't want this to be too square on the corners, so that's why I'm leaving a piece out. And then I went ahead and put in a little bit narrower area here underneath this section of road. I was thinking it might be just kind of nice to add a little bit of variety here as far as terrain shape, because this is kind of a bland looking little first area, at least until I get some foliage in here. So we'll get down here to the edging pieces that I want to use. I think it might have been faster to go the other direction. There's so many terrain pieces in here. Would have been nice if they split this up into a few different drawers. But what are you going to do? It is what it is. I want to try to be careful how I put these down too, because I'm not so sure, excuse me, not so sure that I can do an undo and have that work with the replayer. And so I don't want to take that chance. So I'm trying to be a little bit more careful as I put these down. There we go. Probably should be putting these corner pieces down first. I think maybe I've been getting lucky. Okay. So there's what we had before I deleted it all. Oop, I got one more little corner over here. There we go. So now we can go ahead and start adding in some details. So we'll come over here to the pirate tree, and we'll go ahead and line part of this road with pirate trees. I'm thinking it might be kind of cool to have the trees overhanging the road so it looks a little bit tight as you're running through this, kind of like it's choked. Kind of like that. So you got kind of a little tunnel through there. That's kind of neat. Okay, I'm liking how that's looking. Now we'll go ahead and have this kind of open up into a little bit larger area here. So we'll set the trees back away from the road. Kind of stick them back out like so. I'm thinking in this little clearing we'll have a few things set up. Maybe some enemies will show up here or something of that nature. Okay, there we go. So now that's kind of looking a little more interesting. And just so we don't get too crazy with the trees, we'll just stick one more over there. And for a little bit of variety, we can put a few palms in here. Kind of mix things up a little bit, add some height so that not everything looks quite the same height. And with the replayer, I can put down as much stuff as I want, really. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of limitations. I'm sure there must be some, but I haven't really run into them yet. Though with this series here, I may be testing that a lot more than I was expecting to. Here we go. It's looking pretty good. Okay. We got some variety here as far as trees go. This area is a little bit bare. Let's throw a couple of trees in here. Okay. And then we'll put in some ruins. Let's see, I don't think I want to put those in just yet, but something like this might be kind of nice. And that'll help cover up that seam a little bit too. There we go. Remember, we only want to build up to that point, so we can't really go beyond that. Just trying to see if that will fit. I don't think it's gonna. I think I need to go a little bit further. It's right on that piece there. Yeah. So I don't think that would be a good idea to try to squeeze two of those in there, but I could do one. So we'll do that. And we'll come over and do that, and that'll add a little bit of a finishing edge there to that piece. I'll go ahead and put some plants in here behind that for some interest. I didn't leave room enough there to do that. On that one, I don't think I want to put any more of those in. And as far as these go, I haven't really left myself a good place to do that. Maybe that would be a good spot. I don't think it'll fit over here. Yeah, that extends onto the road. Oh, wait, I can do it like that. There we go. That adds something on that side to balance that out. Maybe that little altar will sit over here just off the road. And there we go. So now if we come up into Spark mode, we can kind of look around, and that looks pretty good. That looks kind of like an interesting little area you can run through. And because it's kind of wide, there's really not a lot of reason to put any kind of traps in there. But I'm thinking I may do some enemies instead, and I'll get to that in a minute. This little narrow section down here, though, has some possibilities. So this would be a really good spot to put a trap or two. So we'll come down to the platforming or gameplay tools. I'm thinking some spinning blades like these guys, if that will fit. Oh, just barely. Look at that. That'll fit nicely. That's almost like I planned it that way. And I think I got room enough I can put down 2 of them here. There we go. So that will be kind of interesting. And I think that's about all I'm going to do in this section as far as objects and things go. There might be a couple things under decorations that we can put here, but I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on this because I got other things I want to show you. However, there may be a few things we can put down here just to add a little extra visual interest. So some of these things from the camp could potentially be used again down here, I'm thinking. Or even a log. We could throw a log down here, and that would add a little bit of visual interest. Although that doesn't really fit the kinds of trees that are here. But again, you can't really analyze this too crazy because you're kind of limited by the pieces that you can use. And so you can't be too choosy or too particular. Sometimes you have to just pick something just to have something there versus not having anything at all just because it doesn't quite seem like it would fit. So maybe they would have left some supplies out here or something of that nature. So this will add just a few little finishing touches. Is that the orientation I used? Let's flip that around. There we go. And I think that may be all that I do. Okay, so now we'll exit. And whoop, I'm on top of this. I need to get back to the replayer. I think when I went into Spark mode before, I must have messed it up, because normally when you stop building, it will dump you right back out here by the replayer. Okay, so we come back and step on this, and now we can hit stop, and if we rewind, that's all gone. And if we come back and play it back, now it's all back. And there we go. Now we have a layout for section 1 that the randomizer can choose from. Now all we need is 9 more of those. Let me go ahead and set the properties for this while I'm right here. We'll set that playback interval so it happens a little bit quicker. Okay, so I think rather than bore you with creating 9 more of these, I'll build those offline and I'll show you those later. And maybe in the next video I'll show you the different layouts that I generate for this. But the next thing I want to talk about before we wrap this up for today is I want to come out here, and as I mentioned, I want to put down some enemies. And now you'll notice I stopped recording on the replayer before I put down any enemies. I could put down a few individual enemies if I wanted to as part of the replayer, and they would show up out there and I could take them out. But one of the things I thought we could do is use an enemy generator, enemy wave generator. And I'll stick that up here for right now. And as part of using that, I would tie it to some locators. And I can put the locators out here where I would want to use these. And my thinking is that I put these locators down where the enemies will show up. And maybe they'll show up here right when you come through the gate. And now they should be down around the corner. We'll put them out over this way. So I'll put one out here. I'll put another one over here. And I don't want to space them too far apart. And a good 5 enemies seems to be a good number for a single generator. And now I can connect all of those up to that generator and configure this to create some enemies like we did last time. But now when I come over here, and I'm going to step on this replayer and clear it, so we'll go ahead and hit A to clear. Now those locators are still sitting out here. They're actually kind of floating in space. So I've got this generator, which right now, given the position of those locators and what I plan to do, it will work with layout number 1. There's no guarantee that will work with the other 9 layouts that I build. However, the locators are out there, and as I'm building, if I want to, I can go ahead and use those as kind of a marker as I lay down new terrain to figure out exactly where the new terrain would come across this. And then that layout could also invoke this when that layout's selected. So the randomizer for like random trigger 1, if it's connected to this, would also have random trigger 1 connected to the generator to generate those enemies. And that way you can kind of use the same enemy wave generator for some of the layouts, not all of them. Maybe there may be some layouts that don't pass anywhere near these points. They may go over to this other area over here, and in which case the random signal for that one would not invoke this generator. And so that's how I'm thinking we might be able to use the generator as part of the random generation. And again, as I said, you can also put down individual enemies along your specific path as part of the replayer, and that should work. The advantage, though, to using the enemy wave generator is I can connect up some logic signals to this so that when the wave is defeated, I can trigger another toy or maybe the next wave further down the track or anything like that. So that's kind of the difference is here you have individual enemies that you can't really trigger anything off of. Over here you have a wave of enemies that you can connect up signals to. So that's all I'm going to do for today, and I don't want to make this video too long. Next time we'll take a look at the different layouts that I generate here for section 1, and we'll move on to the other sections and see how that goes. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I hope you're as excited as I am to start to see how this is going to come together. This is really looking good to me. Having a adventure, a new dungeon type adventure that I can play that will be a surprise to play every time I play it, with 1,000 different combinations here with the 30 different replayers that I'm going to be using. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and visit my blog to see what we do next. My blog also has some build tips and logic diagrams for the different challenges and things that we make. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.